On December 20, 1939, SS leader Heinrich Himmler issued an order, which was called the Order for the Production of Children. According to him, SS men were encouraged to engage in extramarital affairs with pure-blooded Aryans in order to give birth to racially perfect children for the Reich. This measure was aimed at increasing childbearing and the emergence of a new generation of citizens and soldiers in war-depleted Germany. The country needs new soldiers ready to defend the Reich and win, Himmler repeated more than once. Such relationships, the National Socialists called free marriages. At the beginning of 1936, Heinrich Himmler, who at that moment was making a career as the head of the police, Gestapo and assault detachments, invited 24-year-old Hedwig Potthast to his personal headquarters. Himmler's official wife, Margaret, was 7 years older than her husband and no longer attracted him as a woman. The future Reichsfuhrer introduced to her in 1918, and married 10 years later. Margaret came from a wealthy family, owned several medical clinics, and Henry did not hide from friends that this family union was more of a marriage of convenience. Margaret gave birth to a daughter, Gudrun, but could not have more children. In 1933, an adopted son appeared in the family, 4-year-old Gerhard von der Ae. The head of the SS had long wanted to have a son, and raising a boy seemed to him a noble occupation that would also serve to strengthen the family. Margaret and her children lived in the quiet Bavarian town of Tegernsee, located by the lake of the same name in the foothills of the Alps. Himmler was there only on visits and behaved like a real henpecked man in the company of an overbearing spouse. The tyrant and executioner, to whom thousands of SS men obeyed meekly, obeyed his wife at home and fulfilled all her wishes. Over the years, Margaret has become more and more a woman who does not tolerate any objections. A childhood friend of Himmler, Hans Moltke, spoke of her as follows: tough, cold, nervous, bitchy, and not distinguished by a complacent character. At some point she began to irritate the impressionable husband so much that he was increasingly absent from home under various pretexts. Before you continue watching, please subscribe to my channel and like it. Of course, this is optional, the main thing is to be sincere. In his memoirs, a childhood friend described Frau Himmler as follows: Marga mercilessly humiliated her husband. I have never seen a man who was so much under the influence of an overbearing wife. Himmler exuded courtesy, but the more gracious he was, the more Margaret humiliated him. The SS chief at home was a rag and constantly gave in to his wife in everything. Margaret's antipode was Himmler's executive, accommodating and affectionate secretary Hedwig Potthast, who from the first days of working with the boss demonstrated her willingness to fulfill any of his desires. She came from a wealthy family of an entrepreneur from Cologne, received a good education, had an imperial sports badge, was a member of the Union of German Girls, and every day attracted Himmler more and more. The candy bouquet stage of their relationship gradually developed into intimacy. For meetings with Hedwig, Heinrich rented an apartment in a quiet area of Berlin. He called it his favorite secret room, and the hours spent there in the company of the passionate Hedwig, he considered a kind of compensation for his marriage with Margaret. Himmler's colleagues were also not monogamous and legally had mistresses. They devoted a lot of time to them and showered them with gifts. Nazi ideology favored such relationships and actually encouraged unofficial polygamy. Some wives even promoted the thesis of why a second unofficial wife is important. While the first was pregnant, the second was responsible for meeting the needs of a man. Satisfied and well-groomed, he should devote all his remaining strength to the service, strengthening the combat capability of the Reich and bringing victory closer. Officially, the affair between Himmler and his secretary began on Christmas Day in 1938. At a richly laid festive table in the very secret room, Himmler and Hedwig confessed their feelings to each other and swore to love each other forever. The fruits of their love were 2 children. The son was born on February 15, 1942, and the daughter was born on June 3, 1944. The Führer personally congratulated his associate on the birth of the babies and wished him not to stop there. Surprisingly, the most ruthless and cynical executioner of the 20th century, on whose conscience there are millions of ruined lives, showed amazing tenderness and amazing sentimentality in his relationship with Hedwig. He wrote touching letters to his beloved. In one of them there were the following lines: "Beloved Hedwig, I thank the fate that gave me a meeting and an alliance with you. Special thanks for the birth of our two sweetest crumbs. I'm dying of happiness, kissing your lovely kind hands and your sweet lips." Already during her first pregnancy, Hedwig Potthast resigned from her position as Himmler's secretary and completely switched to his maintenance. She led a closed lifestyle, devoting all her time to her children and beloved Henry. At the same time, the legitimate wife of Marga often visited the imperial chancellery. Himmler's subordinates had to hide their dislike for Margaret, who thrilled them with a thunderous voice and a commanding tone. Everyone who worked with Himmler was afraid to fall under her hot hand. As however he himself. The SS chief's adjutant Joachim Peiper later recalled, she swept through the corridors of the Reich chancellery like an evil fury. Employees huddled in corners, afraid to catch her eye. Himmler managed to keep his affair with Hedwig a secret from Margaret for a while. When Margaret found out about second wife, it was too late. She could only accept the situation. It is known that Himmler planned to buy a house in the countryside after the war and live in it with his beloved children and Hedwig. However, the course of the Second World War dealt a heavy blow to the far-reaching plans of the Reichsfuhrer. Being responsible for the functioning of the concentration camps, Himmler personally gave orders for the extermination of about 6 million Jews, 500,000 gypsies and millions of other prisoners. The total number of people killed by the Nazi regime was almost 15 million. Most of the unfortunate people were citizens of Poland and the Soviet Union. But such inhuman cruelty could no longer affect the outcome of the war. Soon Hitler entrusted Himmler with the command of the Upper Rhine and Vistula army groups, but the Reichsfuhrer did not achieve his goals, namely, to stop the advance of Soviet troops, and lost these posts. Realizing the inevitability of Germany's defeat, Himmler tried to initiate peace talks with the countries of the anti-Hitler coalition. This was also his personal interest. He still hoped to avoid punishment for crimes by offering his services. The Führer learned about Himmler's actions only after the fact. And when he found out, he became enraged and in April 1945, by order, dismissed Himmler from all his posts. Moreover, the Führer gave the order to arrest his long-term associate. However, Himmler managed to evade arrest and went on the run. His attempt to break out of the encirclement failed. The Reichsfuhrer fell into the hands of the British, was identified and taken into custody. While in prison, Himmler died after taking potassium cyanide. In the second half of 1944, Himmler's visits to the lovely family nest, lovingly arranged by Hedwig, became increasingly rare. According to her friends, the blonde beauty was not too bored, finding solace in the arms of other men. By the beginning of 1945, the contacts between the lovers were limited only to letters and telephone conversations. The last meeting between Himmler and Hedwig Potthast took place on March 10, 1945, and since then they have never seen each other. Hedwig learned about Himmler's death from a radio message. After the inglorious surrender of Germany, she tried to escape with her children, but was detained by an American military patrol. During the many hours of interrogations, she categorically rejected any accusations that she was directly related to the crimes of the SS, assuring that the internal affairs of the imperial headquarters did not concern her at all. "I was doing the housework, the children, and I didn't know anything about my husband's affairs," she kept saying. The Americans released her from custody, although the facts said that Hedwig was a staunch supporter of Nazi ideas and always supported Himmler in any of his affairs, including the monstrous atrocities that were committed in German concentration camps. It is known that after the war, Bormann's son, Martin Bormann, testified during interrogation that, while visiting Hedwig Potthast, he saw a lot of stolen jewelry. She also knew that the numerous gold jewelry that Himmler had given her had been seized from wealthy Jews who were then sent to the gas chambers. In 1958, the inconsolable widow got married, changed her surname and lived modestly, without attracting attention to herself and without giving interviews. She passed away in 1994, taking many family secrets to the grave. Subscribe to my channel and like it. See you soon.